Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. I got to say, listen, we're still 2 weeks away from NFL training camp. You know, look, it's again, I always call this is sort of like the dead period, in sports. But, for the so-called dead period, got a ton of stories going right now. I mean, I'm going to hit just about every sport except for a few. I'm going to hit the NFL. I'm going to hit college football, the NBA. I mean, there's a ton of stuff going on. I'm going to talk about two of the greatest coaches that we've had in the history of American team sports at the end of the show, and I'm going to rip them both. I'm going to talk about the defending champion Warriors. I'm going to talk about my man Lamar Jackson getting unfairly criticized. I got a lot to say about that. But also Kevin Durant, speaking of those Warriors, does he come back? There's some new reports that are sounding pretty good for you, boy. Golden State #1 fan, not named in the national media right here. I'm just saying. I'll get into that. I'm going to react, it's the right way to put it, to what Nick Saban said about what is currently going on in college football and sort of the changing of the landscape with the new, these teams changing conferences, and also talk about Bill Belichick and yet another example for why Tom Brady deserves 95% of the credit for the Patriots' 20-year dynasty. But first, let's talk about Donovan Mitchell, one of the guys who ever since he came into the league as a rookie in 2017, I wasn't like huge on Donovan Mitchell coming out of the draft, but once I saw this kid play, once he got a shot in Utah, I'm like, dang, this kid's something else. And we've known that he's been discontent for about the last year and a half, 2 years. I think the turning point for Donovan Mitchell in Utah, honestly, was right when COVID started. Everybody remembers that night, March the 11th of 2020. How could any of us forget? And one of the just many bombshells breaking, back and forth was that the NBA shut down their season because one of its players, Rudy Gobert, had tested positive for COVID. And so there was a lot of uncertainty, we didn't know what the virus really was yet. And Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert's relationship pretty much fractured from that point on because Rudy, just a few days prior, when we had started to hear more and more about this virus coming from China, what is it? What is it about? Are we at risk? And Rudy Gobert, after he does a press conference, is touching the mic, touching the table, breathing on everything, kind of making fun of it. Well, as it turns out, he gets COVID and gives it to Donovan Mitchell. And that was pretty much it for their relationship. It was never in the same place, and Donovan has been discontent with what's gone on in Utah ever since. Reports are that after the Jazz fired Quinn Snyder, who, by the way, I think is an excellent head coach, Donovan Mitchell was like, okay, that's just another example for why I probably don't need to be a part of this team's future. And we've known there's been a connection between Donovan Mitchell and the New York Knicks for a while now. I mean, Donovan is from New York. He's an outspoken Mets fan. And, I mean, listen, he wants to play in New York City. Well, according to Shams Charania, the best insider out there, I think it's safe to say, with all due respect to Adrian Wojnarowski, I think he's past Woj at this point. I think even Brian Windhorst is starting to approach Woj. But Shams Charania reported last night that the Jazz and the Knicks are in talks. In trade talks involving Donovan Mitchell. This trade is going to happen. It's going to happen. First of all, Utah has shown that they are going to go in a different direction with the new head coach they just brought in. Assistant coach from the Boston Celtics. I think he'll do a solid job. But Utah is a franchise that is very much going into a rebuild. You saw all the picks that they acquired for Rudy Gobert. By the way, Utah fleeced Minnesota in that deal. And so they're thinking, okay, we got that for Rudy Gobert. What can we get for Donovan Mitchell? We can probably get 2-3 first-round picks as well as maybe a couple starters. Maybe an RJ Barrett, maybe an Evan Fournier, somebody like that, and some draft picks. Not 7 draft picks like somebody on ESPN said. I don't know what they're talking about, but maybe 3 first-rounders, Evan Fournier and RJ Barrett. But this is going to happen. Utah's trying to acquire picks. Donovan wants to play in New York, and New York is desperate for a guy to help them sell tickets. Donovan Mitchell to the New York Knicks does not put them in championship contention. I think that goes without saying. And I love Donovan Mitchell. I think he has solidified himself as a top 20 player in this league. I still don't think he's in his prime yet. You want to know how good Donovan Mitchell is? Go look at some of his playoff numbers. They're remarkable. And at the end of the day, you pair him up with Jalen Brunson. It's a nice backcourt duo. You still keep, Julius Randle, he's probably got an untradeable contract at this point, but he's, if you're not relying on Julius Randle to be the guy, he's a good fit, for those two. That's a New York Knicks team, given how good they were defensively in the first year under Thibodeau. If they can get back to that with this new backcourt in Brunson and Mitchell, with Julius Randle's kind of your number two, probably more likely number three option. Mitchell Robinson came back. That was a surprise to a lot of people, including myself. It's a playoff team. Knicks make the playoffs. Heck, they made the playoffs a few years ago, and they were the 4th seed. They had home court advantage in a series. And so in an Eastern Conference where the top 4 is solidified, there's no debate, whatever order you want to put it in. It is Boston, it is Milwaukee, it is Philadelphia, and it is, gosh, I'm blanking now. Who was the number 1 seed this year? Oh, gosh. Miami. Yes. Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. Those are the top 4. Everybody else is kind of a free-for-all, right? You got, what's Brooklyn going to do now that they're going to trade KD? It looks like Kyrie may end up staying. Chicago is a solid team. They, Zach LaVine came back. There's some good teams in the East. They're not competing with the top 4 that I just mentioned. But the Knicks are in that group, and I think if you add Donovan Mitchell, even if you give up assets like an RJ Barrett, who's proven himself to be a solid NBA player, that's a playoff team. That team makes the NBA playoffs. And so I think this is a win-win for both sides should this trade go down. Utah goes into rebuild. By the way, Utah's been pretty good with their rebuilds, right? When they had that run where I think they made the Western Conference Finals, if I'm not mistaken, in 2007, lost to the Spurs. They had a nice little run in there. Then they kind of went into a rebuild a little bit, right? They hired Quinn Snyder. They acquired some draft picks. They had Gordon Hayward there. And, they obviously the drafting Rudy Gobert, developing him. And they became a perennial playoff team. But Utah was kind of in sports purgatory, as I call it, because they weren't amazing. They were never a championship contender, but they were never garbage, like bad enough to where they could get a top draft pick. That's sports purgatory. The greatest enemy of great is good. It's not bad, because if you're bad, if you're great, you have a direction. Oklahoma City today is definitely not better than Utah. They have a direction, right? I'm not huge on Chet Holmgren, but hey, they think they know what they're going to do. And if Chet Holmgren pans out, hey, Josh Giddey, Oklahoma City's going somewhere. If you are as great as, say, the Warriors, the Celtics, the Bucks, you say, hey, we can win it all this coming year. You have a direction. You have a goal. What's Utah's goal? Be the 5 seed again? Lose in the first round? Maybe get lucky and get a good matchup, win a playoff series? I mean, heck, they lost 2 out of the first 3 games of the series against the Mavericks with no Luka. So this franchise kind of got stuck. And so Utah, who I think is a very well-run franchise, Danny Ainge has done a good job. Dwayne Wade, who's a part owner there, they've done a solid job. And Utah's always been a fairly well-run organization. I think since the 90s, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Jazz are like 4th in wins since like around the mid-90s. So this organization wins games. So they're saying, we draft well, let's acquire the picks. We got some for Rudy Gobert. We'll get even more for Donovan Mitchell. And let's go in a new direction. And as for Donovan Mitchell, he gets what he's always wanted. Plays in New York. The Knicks get what they wanted. Okay, Knicks fans, give up the Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving dream. I know that stung y'all a few years ago, but you get a star player. Donovan Mitchell's not a superstar, but he is a solidified star in this league, right? He's a multi-time All-Star. He's a threat to go for 30, 40 points on any given night. Excellent shooter. Now he does need to improve on the defensive end. Maybe that'll improve under Tom Thibodeau. But the fit with Jalen Brunson in the backcourt, I think this works for both sides. I think it's a win-win, and I think it's inevitable. Few comments. My man John Rivera is in the comments. He says they're giving up 4 first. Yeah, probably more likely so. Yeah, I mean, I think if the Jazz got, 5 for Rudy Gobert, they're probably getting 4 for Donovan Mitchell. I mean, like I said, he is a multi-time All-Star. He is an excellent shooter, good scorer. We all know he can put anybody on a poster at, what is he, 6'2", 6'3"? He could dunk on your head. But I think it's a good fit. I really do. But, we'll see what ends up happening. But I would be really surprised if this deal doesn't get done in the next max 2 weeks. Max 2 weeks. And again, I think it works for both sides. Now we get that out of the way, because I did want to touch on that. We're going to stay in the NBA for just a second. Then we're going to move to football. NFL, then college, then back to NFL. Stick in the NBA. So we know that if you are an NBA fan, and by the way, John said 48 hours. Yeah, very well could be the next 48 hours. If they're in talks now, maybe I'm being delusional saying it'll take 2 weeks to get a deal done, because I think both sides want the deal to get done. And if that's the case, both sides are seemingly acting in good faith, it probably will get done. But moving on, we're actually going to stay in the great city of New York. We're going to go to a different borough, though. We're going to go to Brooklyn, where, of course, if you are an NBA fan who has not been living under a rock, you know that it's absolute madness right now. Where's Kyrie going to go? There's a new report saying Kyrie may end up staying in Brooklyn because nobody outside of the Lakers want him, and it looks like the Lakers are not willing to give up 2 first-round picks for him. So Kyrie may end up staying in Brooklyn. But the big fish is Kevin Durant. Where's he going to go? We're talking about a league MVP, 2-time finals MVP, 4-time champ. This is, I've always said he's not the type of dude that can lead your team to a championship. That's why I think part of the reason that Miami and Phoenix were on his wish list is it's 2 great teams with a leader, with a set culture that he doesn't have to create himself. He had to create himself in Brooklyn, and it was a disaster. He won 1 playoff series in 3 years. But where's KD going to go? That's the number one story in the NBA. I could argue it's with the NFL still not in training camp yet. I'd say it's the number one story in sports right now. And there's been numerous teams floated against KD's wish list of Phoenix and Miami. I've suggested Boston. I think Boston has a good trade package to go get Kevin Durant. And I think it would work for both Brooklyn and Boston. There's another team that I have floated. Many others have floated, but maybe not as like a realistic possibility of it happening. But as time goes on, it's starting to look more and more realistic. You know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm talking about my Golden State Warriors. Now, Rick Bucher. You guys may know Rick Bucher. You see him on Fox Sports. And again, very, very plugged-in reporters. Longtime Warriors fans like myself know he was actually the TV reporter for Golden State, back in the Bay Area. This is before they were. He was the reporter when they were still, kind of garbage, right? When Steph was going through all those ankle injuries. But Rick Bucher, again, from the Bay Area, he's got ties there. He's got sources. Per Bucher, quote, a league source says Steph Curry obviously, has reached out several times to Kevin Durant, eager to improve his chances of winning a 5th championship and surpassing LeBron James, with whom Curry is currently tied at 4 titles each. Now, do we know if that's the primary motivation of Steph to pass LeBron in championships? I mean, do I think Steph is motivated to pass LeBron? Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. These are 2 guys that faced off 4 times in the finals. They've kind of got like a love-hate relationship. They're on much better terms now than they were, say, in 2016, 2017. But, LeBron, a few months ago, remember, he floated, hey, I'd love to play with Steph Curry. And Steph Curry said, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So, Steph's good with LeBron, but he keeps it at arm's distance, or arm's length. But not the case with Kevin Durant. And for good reason. So, in an effort to help Steph Curry, I take off my Dak Prescott hat, which for those of you that watch the show, frequent watchers, viewers of the show know I normally wear it. Let me put on my recruiting hat, which for the podcast audience is my 2022 Warriors championship hat. And let's just go into what would make sense. So I said, as a Warriors fan, I will absolutely welcome Kevin Durant back to Golden State if the Warriors don't have to give up Wiggins, all the young players, and multiple draft picks. It's I don't want to gut the franchise outside of the core 3 just for Kevin Durant. Because I do want this dynasty to continue to go longer for another 3-4 years, which I think even is currently constructed, it has a great possibility of doing. But you know what it kind of reminds me of? Because there was a report from Chris Broussard today that said, according to a source close to KD that Chris Broussard talked to, that Kevin Durant does want to go back to Golden State. If you don't believe Chris Broussard, okay, it's just another reporter, maybe. But KD himself said in a podcast just last month, yeah, I'd be open to coming back to Golden State. Those are KD's words, not mine, not a reporter. KD's own words. He'd be open to coming back. And as time goes on, this is now 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks of a day since KD asked out of Brooklyn. And nobody's made any major offer for him. As a matter of fact, it was Brooklyn who called Minnesota to offer KD, not the other way around. Minnesota wasn't like, please, can we have Kevin Durant? We'll give you anything. No. It was the Nets who were looking to trade Kevin. That's where the talks are at. And there was a report the other day from Brian Windhorst saying that, nobody's really contacting Brooklyn right now. Which then opens the door for Golden State. The price has come down, and Golden State's assets haven't gone anywhere. You've been watching Summer League. A lot of you have. You've been watching Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, and Paolo Banchero. My goodness, he looked great before he was shut down for the summer. You've seen the Warriors. You've seen James Wiseman. You've seen Moses Moody, who's a 30-point threat every night. Have you seen Jonathan Kuminga, who looks like the best athlete on the floor, even against NBA players last regular season? And Golden State may not even have to give up all of them. There's reports saying that the Warriors may not even have to give up Andrew Wiggins. And he could be the sixth man. So what this reminds me of, to use a biblical reference, right? Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a God-fearing guy. But I've made no mistake about that. And in the Bible, even those of you who may not be as familiar with the Bible, know of the story of the prodigal son. Everybody knows that story. It's kind of reminded me of the prodigal son a little bit, right? He leaves. He takes his father's inheritance to him. And he says, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'll be fine on my own. And then when it's all said and done, he's broke and has nowhere to go. And he's desperate. And so shamefully, he returns. And his father runs to him. According to the good book, he hugs him, he kisses him. He's just thrilled that his son has returned. And they throw a party for him. Now, there were some that were jealous, right? The prodigal son's brother was like, hey, time out. I've worked my you-know-what off. This is not obviously quoting scripture, but I've worked my you-know-what off for you. I've been loyal to you. And you see, this guy, blows all his money and is broke, and you welcome him back with open arms? And the father's like, yes, because that's my son. I am thrilled that he has returned home. And so that's what it reminds me of a little bit. KD left the Warriors, right? The Warriors gave him everything. They gave him support. They gave him the ability. What has KD always talked about? He says it over and over. He just wants to go hoop. Just wants to go hoop. Okay. You can do that in Golden State. You have to lead. That's Steph and Draymond's job. You don't even have to be the leading scorer every night. Steph can do that. Clay can do that. Wiggins can do that. Poole can do that. You don't have to be the defensive anchor. That's Draymond Green's job. That's Andrew Wiggins' job. That's Kevon Looney's job. Occasionally, it's Klay Thompson's job. Even Steph's not too shabby on that end of the floor. He can just go out there and hoop. He could score 30 every other night. He could play really good defense, which we know in 2018, he was actually top 5 in the league in blocks. He doesn't have to lead anybody. He can come home. Now, will there be people in the Bay Area that are cynical about it? Sure. I think the media would be. I think there are some players within the Warriors organization like, time out. We're just going to, we're going to trade some of our young guys for him to come back after how he did us. Well, yes, because Kevin Durant is family. Joe Lacob said the day after KD left the Warriors, Joe Lacob, the owner of the Warriors, he said 35 will hang in the rafters one day. KD played 3 years for the Warriors. Joe Lacob said, 35 is going to be retired one day. Nobody will ever wear that jersey again. Yeah, he comes back. Him and Draymond are on good terms now. At the end of the day, it's the Warriors who have the leverage. It's Steph Curry who has the leverage. Say, hey, listen, big guy, I won without you. I won a finals MVP in your absence against the team that swept you. Now, Steph, of course, would not verbalize that directly to KD, but that's how he feels. Everybody in that Warriors franchise knows Steph's the one. And KD knows I don't have to be the one. So I'm just saying it works. And so listen, I'll do what I can in my little space to help the Warriors. KD, see this jersey? Apologize for the podcast. I didn't see this. More than welcome to come back, my guy. More than welcome. This jersey will be waiting on you when you return home. It reminds me of the prodigal son a little bit. I'm not going to lie. It really does. Let's get to the comments. Let's see. My guys, the Cowboys Cam Fan Podcast. Shout out to them. He said, I need one of those Dak hats. Yeah, this is the Dak hat. I'm going to leave this Warriors hat on for just a second before I get through the comments. Let's see. Get one of those Dak. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's, I think Dak's got a website. You can get the hats. I actually literally just checked on his website the other day. I didn't see the black and white hats, but I think there's some white hats with like Dallas Cowboys blue letters that says D4K, and it looks like it's spelled Dak, and obviously number 4 is his number. So yeah, listen, man, you ought to go check those out and get you one. There's some wristbands, there's some hoodies, there's some t-shirts, there's stuff for men, women, kids. It's shout out to Mr. Prescott. John just says you've been working out. Yeah, well, but listen, man, I'm trying. Gotta keep my body in shape a little bit. That's what I do. But I mean, listen, and I think John is stepson. Yeah, exactly. You are correct, John. I think it works. I do. I think it works. KD comes back to a hero's welcome. Now, the only thing is opening night would be pretty awkward. Because we know opening night, the Warriors are going to play at home against whoever in October. Everybody's going to get their rings. And, it's always really awkward for the new players on a team that just won the championship. And they're just kind of standing off the side watching their teammates get rings. But it's cool because then their teammates go to them and say, hey, see how cool this is? Hey, let's see if you can get a ring with us, right? But it'll kind of be awkward. Katie's sort of like standing off to the side, watching, all the players. Draymond gets his ring and Clay gets his ring. But then when Steph gets his, and it'll probably be Bob Fitzgerald, the Warriors play-by-play man, going, and the Warriors Finals MVP, Steph Curry, and Chase Center's going to go nuts. It's going to be like, oh boy, this is, opening night would be a little awkward. Then outside of that, listen, after game 1, last 81 games this season in the playoffs, it's go time. But I must say, a lot of people are, have been dogging the Warriors the last few days. Like, man, why would you want to go get Kevin Durant again, right? It's, it'd be terrible for the league. Well, it wouldn't be great for competition. I admit that. But from the Warriors' perspective, it was like, hey, time out. It's kind of like the Bulls in the 90s. Jordan retires, and the Rockets go back-to-back. Obviously, Michael came back in 95 and played, I forgot how many games it was. Wasn't in shape, did not play well at all against the Orlando Magic in the playoffs, had a terrible turnover in game 1, right? And everybody's like, oh, okay, we've got the Bulls. Well, Bulls dynasty's over. Jordan's still, he's going to be there. He's going to be better next season. And the Bulls won 72 games. They added Dennis Rodman. They won 72 games. This is kind of similar for the Warriors, right? KD leaves, Iguodala gets traded, Steph gets hurt, Clay gets hurt, so it's really just Draymond and a bunch of, role players, and the Warriors had the worst record in basketball. It's like, okay, yep, dynasty's over, it's over. And the next season, Steph comes back, but Clay gets hurt yet again, tears his Achilles, and the Warriors miss the playoffs. It's like, yeah, okay. Clay's going to come back. They'll be a nice team. They'll be like the 5 seed. They may win a playoff series, but they're not a threat. And all of a sudden, my guys win the championship. And they are very likely, it seems at this point, increasingly likely, I should say, to get Kevin Durant back in the Bay Area. And all the league's like, no. Oh. Ooh. How quickly the attitude shifts. How quickly it shifts. You had your 2 years. I warned you on the show last year. You had your 2 years of gloating. But, listen, I think even without KD, we're going to win the championship. We get KD. It's a foregone conclusion. It's over. I don't think there's anyone in the West that can compete with Golden State to begin with. I think their biggest problem will be out East, whether it's Milwaukee, Boston improved, and we saw it. Listen, Boston gave my Warriors a fight in the finals. Whether it's if Philadelphia maybe adds some pieces or Miami, I still maintain Miami's going to add somebody. They're going to add somebody. Just watch. And so listen, it's going to be. John just said, I still think they might be. I think they still might be on team when the season starts. Who's they, like, still be on the team? Like the Warriors young players, or because I mean, listen, there's a chance this trade never even happens. Who knows? There's a chance. I mean, maybe I don't know if Johnson's referring to Kevin and Kyrie. Again, I'm reading it looks like Kyrie's going to end up staying because nobody wants him, which I can't say that I blame them, which is really bad for Kyrie Irving because this is the last year of his deal. So it's not like, not saying you want to throw away a year, but it's not like you're like, yeah. John's talking about Kyrie and Katie. Yeah. And there is a chance it could still be in the roster. But part of the Chris Broussard report I brought up earlier, he said that that Kevin does not want to play with Kyrie. Now, there was a report beforehand that said that KD did want to play with Kyrie. I don't know. I mean, who knows on that front? I do think KD was irritated with Kyrie not getting vaccinated, which pretty much doomed their season. It was just nothing but chaos centering all the way around Kyrie Irving all season long, culminating in a sweep. But I do think that it's a terrible look for Kyrie Irving, not to get too far off track, but it's a really bad look. The fact that he's got 1 year left of his contract. He opted into the last year of his deal. He's going to be a free agent next year. And people are like, no, stay away. Is somebody going to give him a big deal next summer? Possibly. He's still a phenomenal player. He's still a great player. But, man, he's too big of a risk. And Lakers fan, I know there's a lot of Laker fans out there saying, man, you got to trade Westbrook for Kyrie. Or you could trade Westbrook to Charlotte for Terry Rozier. Is Terry Rozier the player Kyrie is? Absolutely not, and it ain't even close. But he's a shot maker. Now, he's not a very good defensive player. That's the thing you worry about, but, it's not like Kyrie is either. He's not going to tear up your locker room. He's a good shooter. That works well with LeBron, right? He's available. He doesn't get hurt all that much. Yeah. John says the grass is never green on the other side. Very rare, very, very rare instances that it is, John. You are absolutely correct. And to have KD in this situation where, and people are going to crush him for it. We know if it happens, people are going to crush Golden State, but not even in the same, KD's never going to hear the end of this. He'll never hear the end of this if this happens. But I do think my takeaway would be KD is admitting his weakness, which I don't think is I don't think admitting your weakness is a weakness. I've always said, listen, if you are willing to come around to understand what you're good at, what you're not, good on you. Okay, if KD at this stage of his career, he's going into year 16? Yeah, he's still in his prime, I believe, but he's not. He's on the back end of his career. He's on the back half of his career. He knows, am I just going to play for a Brooklyn Nets team that makes the playoffs, maybe wins a series here and there, but never really contends because the front office is awful and having to deal with Kyrie Irving, who KD did choose. I do want to put some blame on KD for that. If he left Golden State I've always said, if he left Golden State for Miami, if he went to Boston, if he went to the LA Clippers, good cultures. Okay, I understand it. But the reports that he was going to the Knicks, I'm like, why on earth would he go to the Knicks? James Dolan, what are we doing? A roster that's not very good. And he one-ups that. He says, no, I'm going to the second place New York team, the Nets, with the kookiest star that we've seen in the NBA since Rodman. I mean, maybe since then. If we're talking superstar players, yeah, I guess it would be Rodman, because Rodman, I don't know if I call him a superstar, but he was a superstar rebounder. I wouldn't call him a superstar player, but yeah, I mean that's how it goes. That's how it goes. So look, if KD admits where he's, maybe not, great, which is leadership, which is being the man, as Charles Barkley called it, the bus driver for a championship team. But I'll tell you something else. I heard somebody say, last point, we'll move on to Lamar Jackson. I heard somebody say this on Fox Sports Radio. I forgot his name. He played in the NFL. I forgot his name. But I heard him say this the other day. He said, not only would it be great for Steph if he passed LeBron in championships, which, by the way, guys, I am the biggest Steph Curry fan ever. I do not subscribe to Bobby Marks saying that Steph is the second greatest player in any way, shape, or form. Just want to make that clear. Bobby is on some. I don't know what he's talking about. But of course, Katie would love, or Steph would love to pass LeBron rings. That would be a great look for him. But an even better look is not only if he won ring number 5 and passed the great LeBron James, but if he said, you know what? KD's on the roster, and I'm going to win an MVP with him on the roster. Because there's still people out there saying, well, when Steph and KD were together, KD won the finals MVPs. He did. I didn't think he deserved the one in 2018. I think that should have went to Steph, but he won them. Well, Steph could say, okay, all right, I'm going to win it with him. I'm going to win the finals MVP with KD. I'm just saying. John brings up something that actually happened today. He says, I don't think talking about Kevin Durant, I don't think Kevin Durant's going to Phoenix because of the Ayton deal. Yes, because DeAndre Ayton, a few hours ago, let me pull up the deal. I think it's he has agreed to. I don't think he's signed it. He's agreed to a 4-year. Hold on, let me pull it up. Okay, this is from Woj. A restricted free agent center DeAndre Ayton has agreed to a 4-year, $133 million maximum offer sheet with the Indiana Pacers. The Phoenix Suns will have 48 hours to match what is actually the largest offer sheet in NBA history for a restricted free agent, which DeAndre Ayton is. So I don't think Phoenix is going to match that. I think they made it pretty clear that he and Monty Williams didn't get along. Like that ship has sailed. We knew that after Game 7 when they lost to Dallas. But yeah, you make a good point, John. Who do they trade? Campaign? I mean, you're not trading Chris Paul. That's the heartbeat of your franchise. Do you trade Booker? I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, KD's better than Booker. Nobody's debating that, whatsoever. But that's an interesting tandem. CP3 and KD this points back to KD would work back in Golden State. But would KD and Chris Paul get along? Chris Paul don't really. Chris Paul get in your, you know what? That's why I didn't think the Miami thing made a whole lot of sense, because Jimmy Butler's the same way. I'd say even more so than Chris is. So that I don't know if KD would love that. The troll of trolls, Barry Grant Jr. is in the comments. Another overpaid center gets paid just like Rudy Gobert, as Barry would say. Rudy Gobert. I like Ayton more than Gobert. I'm not a huge Ayton fan. I wasn't a huge fan of him coming out of the draft. My favorite player of that 2018 draft was Trae Young. Clearly, Luka's proven to be better. Trae's been the second best player in that draft. But yeah, this is why Shaq has been talking about, Shaq was like, man, I wish I was still in the NBA. I wish if Mama O'Neal had me, like 10 years after she did, I'd still be in the NBA making $30 million a year doing nothing. Shaq, listen, what would Shaq be making today? Oh, my goodness. If DeAndre Ayton's getting paid in excess of $30 million, what would Shaq get? I mean, he'd probably get what Jokic is getting. Jokic signed the biggest contract in NBA history. What was it, 5 years, $250? It's like, dang. Hey, listen, I'm not against it. Jokic, people think I hate Jokic because I don't think he should have been MVP. I think he's one of the best players in basketball. He's one of the 10 best players in basketball, and I do think he can be the best player in a championship team. Leading a team to a championship, I don't know. Being the best player in a championship team, yes, I do. I do think that about Jokic. I just don't think he's the MVP, but I think he's worth every penny. What's Denver going to do? Let him go and be an also-ran? So, yeah. Listen, you got to get your money. Barry asked, "Did you hear what Shaq said?" I didn't hear what I know exactly what he said about Rudy Gobert in the past. I haven't heard what he said about Mr. Ayton. I'm trying to pull it up on my phone if he has, in fact, said anything. Let's see. Because I definitely want to get to Lamar Jackson, because that's my guy. See if Shaq has said anything about DeAndre Ayton. No, I haven't seen anything. Just looks like some stuff about when, some stories about Shaq back in the day with the Lakers, but I haven't seen anything what he said about DeAndre Ayton. But yeah, listen, that was, kind of one of the bigger fish in the market. And it looks like, Indiana's going to land him. Barry said, he said, nobody will beat the T-Wolves in a 7-game series. I want off this earth. Well, listen, I mean, Shaq did say the Warriors would win the championship way before that was even thought of by anybody outside of me. But he is dead wrong. He is dead wrong. I think he's saying that because Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns are together. I said I think it's a horrible fit. Horrible fit. But I think that's listen, he's loyal to the big man. I get that. He's not loyal to Rudy Gobert, so I don't know why he said that. But I mean, listen, what are you going to do? The Clippers did this very well. What are you going to do if you play small, play 5 out? Rudy Gobert can't guard the perimeter now. He can't guard the perimeter. Look at the Clippers series. Look at a few years ago when the Jazz played my Warriors. And remember what Steph Curry did to Rudy Gobert one-on-one? And that's the defensive player of the year 3 times? Miss me with that. Draymond Green should be a 3-time defensive player of the year, not Rudy flipping Gobert. It's crazy town. But all that to say, KD, you're more than welcome to come back. All right, let me switch back to my DAT cap. I had to get my Warriors recruiting hat, aka a championship hat, because the Warriors did win the 2022 NBA Finals, in case you didn't hear that before. Let's shift to the NFL now. I know I say this all the time. We are so close to the NFL season. We are, God, we're close. We're like within 60 days or so of opening night between the Rams and the Bills. That'll be a phenomenal opening game. But a team that I think is going to compete this year, I think a team that has a chance to get the 1 seed, a team that I think is absolutely going to win their division. I think it's a foregone conclusion if they stay healthy. And a team, I mean, listen, buy stock in this team. If you're a betting man, I'm not, but of course I do that segment all the time if I were a betting man. But the Baltimore Ravens. I'm a huge buyer in the Baltimore Ravens because they had basically all of their corners got hurt in a passing league. All of their running backs got hurt, which is basically the core of their offense, running the football, part of what helps make Lamar Jackson successful. Yet and still, at one point at midseason, the Ravens had the best record in the AFC. An AFC that had Tennessee, that had the eventual AFC champion Bengals, the Chiefs, all these teams, all these contending teams in that conference. And it was Baltimore who had the best record in the conference at midseason. Then what happened? Lamar Jackson went down. More on that in just a second. But there is a Twitter feud going on between former Ravens safety, and I will give him his respect here. It's the only place I'm going to give him his respect. Bernard Pollard is a Super Bowl champion with the Baltimore Ravens. He won Super Bowl 47 with the team in 2013. They beat the San Francisco 49ers. And, nice player. He was a good safety. And Bernard Pollard said, talking about Lamar Jackson, that that basically star receivers will not want to come to Baltimore because of the style of offense. Okay? And Lamar Jackson didn't like it. And I won't read you the whole Twitter back and forth because it's long. It's deep. They go back and forth. Lamar says, why are you speaking on my name? You're not a Hall of Famer. And Bernard Pollard says something back and talking about, teams feared me, which nobody feared Bernard Pollard now. Come on. But it goes back to something. Lamar Jackson is, in a lesser sense, he's kind of like Giannis in a way. I think they're very, very similar athletes because we've never really seen an NBA player like Giannis. We've never seen a guy who can put it on the floor, who's a serviceable shooter, who's an excellent ball handler, especially for a guy who's 6'11", who is as dominant down low as anyone in NBA history short of Shaquille O'Neal, who is arguably the best defensive player in basketball, can, as he did in the 2021 finals, go for 35 and 13 with multiple blocks, shoot 50% from the field. He can lead you in the league in scoring, which he almost did this year. He can win a defensive player of the year. We've never seen anything quite like Giannis. He's not like LeBron. He's not like Kevin Durant. He's not like Steph Curry. He's not like those guys in terms of how he plays. We've never really seen anything like him. And so you have some shots. You have Andre Iguodala coming out, and I love Iggy. I mean, heck, he's in the background of my show. You see him looking over my shoulder there. Great book, The Sixth Man. But Andre Iguodala, my man, but he came out and said that Rasheed Wallace would be better than Giannis if he played today, which is blasphemy. Rasheed Wallace couldn't shine Giannis's shoes. But, and you've got James Harden years ago. Remember, he said, hey, I'd be as good as Giannis if I could, just run and dunk. Basically, saying that's all Giannis did. It's like, I don't get the disrespect for Giannis. This is a two-time league MVP. This is a champion. This is a defensive player of the year. It's a finals MVP, a guy who many say is the best player in the world. I say he is a very close second behind Steph Curry, but I've always given Giannis his respect ever since last year. I think Lamar Jackson is in that sort of same category. Because when he came in, for the record, I wasn't that big on Lamar Jackson coming out of Louisville. I certainly was as big on him as I was Josh Allen, who I was right on the money about, on Sam Darnold, who I was dead wrong about. I wasn't even sure if I liked him more than Baker Mayfield. And I wasn't a huge Baker fan. Obviously, he's proven to be better than Baker. But ever since, it's been, it used to be, well, he's a receiver. He can't play quarterback. And he goes on, takes over a Baltimore Ravens team that is middle of pack with Joe Flacco, goes on a winning streak, wins the division. It's like, well, he can't throw. Until he led the league in touchdown passes in 2019 and won the unanimous MVP. But he lost in the playoffs. Okay, well, the next year, he played the team that he got crushed in the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans, on the road, and beat them with his arm and with his legs. And then this past year, he put it all together. He was accurate with the football, had a good deep ball, was running around again with no running game to speak of, with his defense giving up a ridiculous amount of points per game, and the Ravens were 8-2 at one point. Then they lost 2 straight games. And then Lamar Jackson went down. They did not win a game after that. Riddle me this. The only guys since Lamar Jackson came into the NFL with more wins than Lamar. And keep in mind, Lamar Jackson did not start initially to start his rookie year. Keep in mind, he didn't start till midway through his rookie year. Keep in mind, he missed the whole last half of last season. The only quarterbacks with more wins than Lamar Jackson, maybe you've heard of their last names: Allen, Wilson, Rodgers, Brady, Mahomes. Only quarterbacks with more wins since 2018 than Lamar Jackson. Something else, too. He can't beat Patrick Mahomes. He did last year. Actually, he came from behind to do it. That was another knock on Lamar. Remember, it's like, if you build a lead in the Ravens, take the runaway. Lamar's one-dimensional. Oh, that's funny. He came back from 15 points down against the Kansas City Chiefs and won. Oh, that's funny. He came back from down 19 points in the fourth quarter to beat the Indianapolis Colts. So where are we going to move the goalpost now? This is somebody in Lamar Jackson who has one of the greatest resumes to start a career that we've seen by a quarterback. We know he broke the record a few years ago. I think it was his MVP year. I think it was, for the most rushing yards by quarterback in a single season in NFL history. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's an All-Pro. Again, a unanimous MVP, a career record of 37-12. In other words, he wins basically 75% of his starts. So Lamar Jackson in 4-game spurts goes 3-1. If you put that in the traditional 16-game schedule, that's a 12-4 record that almost always wins the division and gets you a home playoff game. And most wins by an NFL quarterback before turning 25. So he's still young. He's not in his prime yet. He has improved as a passer. He is still a threat to run the football. His team fell apart last year with injuries. I mean, they were starting practice squad players in their defensive backfield last season. And yet, before he got hurt, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC. But I'm supposed to believe Bernard Pollard. Nobody wants to go to Baltimore. Could that be not because of Lamar Jackson, but because of Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator? Could that be his fault? Because you got this notion out there that, well, it's Greg Broman is part of what makes Lamar Jackson. He plays into his strengths. Well, all the running backs got hurt last year, and Lamar still delivered with fifth stringers in his backfield. He still threw 36 touchdown passes. Again, must I remind you, Greg Roman isn't out here running option plays when his Ravens are down 15 points in the fourth quarter. You got to throw the football. You got to make big throws. Lamar did and can and has. So my question to you, if you are Lamar Jackson doubter, my question to you, Bernard Pollard, is what more could you ask for? He has won in the playoffs. He has won an MVP. Did it unanimously. Only guy to ever do that was, Tom Brady. He led the league in touchdown passes with 36. He has the most wins by a quarterback before the age of 25. He has fewer wins than only the guys we all agree are elite quarterbacks, Wilson and Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. What more are you asking for? That's my question. And Baltimore's a well-run franchise, too. I've always said Steve Bisciotti's the most underrated owner in the NFL. I think he's done a phenomenal job. John Harbaugh might be the most underrated coach in the NFL. I think he's done a phenomenal job since he's come to Baltimore. Baltimore, in their brief existence, which is like 25 years more or less, they've been a very well-run franchise. Last year, no Lamar Jackson. Did not win a game. They went from number one seed, then Lamar goes down. They literally fall apart. Don't win a game after that. But I'm supposed to believe that he can't take his team to a Super Bowl. I have a very hard time believing that. Am I supposed to believe that receivers don't want to go there? It's like, well, what about Hollywood Brown? No. Hollywood Brown went to Arizona because they were the team that was going to pay him. Baltimore didn't want to pay Hollywood Brown. Kind of how they don't want to pay Lamar Jackson. Why? I'm the wrong guy to ask. Why on earth you would not want to pay Lamar Jackson? I mean, you got any better ideas? I mean, I like next year's quarterback draft. I really like the kid out of Kentucky. I think he's going to be a good player in the NFL, a good quarterback. I really like C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. But they're not proven. Lamar Jackson has taken you places. But he's not the guy to take you to a Super Bowl. You won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, who was great in the postseason. It's kind of like Madison Bumgarner. Madison Bumgarner was really pretty good in the regular season and just went into a whole different mode in the playoffs with the San Francisco Giants in the early 2010s. That's Joe Flacco. It was fine in the regular season, then just took it to another gear in the postseason. He was average. I mean, there's a reason that they called his contract, many called his contract one of the worst in NFL history. There was a time Joe Flacco, not Tom Brady, not Drew Brees, not Peyton or Eli Manning. It was a time Joe Flacco was the highest paid quarterback in football. And he won a Super Bowl with him. You're telling me you can't win with Lamar Jackson? So Bernard Pollard, miss me with that, with your false narrative about Hollywood Brown and Lamar Jackson. And Ravens, pay the man. Give him his money. Come on now. Well, let's be honest. Like I tweeted earlier, there's three quarterbacks that when there's criticism of them in terms of you can't win a Super Bowl with them or they're not elite, I question, have you watched them play? And that's Dak Prescott, wearing his hat right now, as I always do, Derek Carr, and Lamar Jackson. It's those three. I'm like, do you not get it? Do you not get their value to this franchise, their value to winning at the highest of levels? Now, given Lamar has a much better run franchise than Dak and Derek do. But they didn't win without him last year. I always say, you know how valuable somebody is when they're gone, as opposed to when they were there. I've always saw that with Kyrie Irving. He's not that valuable of a player. Boston won and actually won more after he left. And Brooklyn, look at their record, is better without him. I've questioned, not said, but questioned how valuable John Morant is to Memphis. Is he great? Of course. But why did they go 20 and 6 without him? And they were more competitive with the eventual champion Golden State Warriors without Ja. They were better defensively, moved the ball more. There's many factors. But it's the same thing. When Dak got hurt in 2020, did you watch the Cowboys offense? Maybe you didn't because it was unwatchable. Okay? Have you seen the Baltimore Ravens without Lamar Jackson? It's pretty ugly. It's pretty ugly. And that kid they started, I'm blanking on his name, number 2. But not, nice quarterback, good backup. Perfect backup for Lamar Jackson. Played pretty well. They didn't win a game. Just saying. All right. Moving on to college football. And I'm excited for this coming season, in part because I looked at my Tennessee Volunteers schedule. We might win 9 games this year, folks. We're not going to win the division. Listen, Georgia is still they're the national champions, for crying out loud. They're the cream of the crop. We know this. And at some point, much to the chagrin of many of the viewers and listeners of Carving It Up, I will predict my Tennessee Volunteers schedule. I will do that. Do it every year. But before I do, I do want to also, I heard that she is watching, give a big shout out and a happy birthday to my aunt who is watching. Happy birthday. A big shout out to her. She's the best. We've got a really weird, awkward hug that we've been doing for 5 years. She can't explain it. I can't explain it. It's terrible. It's awful. And for that matter, the family is like, what are you guys doing? It's a very weird hug. Basically, it was an accidental thing that happened about 5 years ago. She went to hug me one time. We were like leaving her house and I accidentally hugged her arm. It was awful. But happy birthday to my aunt. Shout out to her. But college football is approaching, certainly faster than the NFL is. And I hate doing this on this show, criticizing somebody who I really have a lot of admiration for. And Nick Saban is one of those guys. I have the utmost respect for Nick Saban. I think he is the greatest college football coach of all time. And in my humble opinion, I don't think it's that close. But he has not helped his image as of late. And when it came to the NIL rules, which you guys know I'm all in favor, I think there does need to be a little bit of regulation with NIL, but anyone who's listened to this show for a long period of time, going back to 2019, I've said on this show since then, college athletes need to get paid and compensated for what they do and the money that they bring into these athletic programs, whatever sport it is, given how much money comes in. But you've had recently the realignment of teams from conference to conference. Last year, Oklahoma and Texas, the SEC. This year, USC, UCLA to the Big Ten. And we know, listen, the SEC and the Big Ten are a class by themselves. Obviously the SEC is better than the Big Ten, but that nobody would argue those are the 2 best conferences in college football. Big 12's okay. ACC, basketball's a little better than football. And the Pac-12's a joke outside of Oregon and Stanford and their other sports outside of football. The football program is completely falling apart, and I'm not sure why. Point is, Nick Saban does not like some of the realignment going on in college football. Take a listen.
My biggest concern is competitive balance. The NFL, every rule that they have is to create competitive balance. And if they could have every team go 8-8, so at the end of the season, every team was playing their last game to get in the playoffs, they would be ecstatic. We don't have any guardrails on what we're doing right now. All right, so we have no restrictions on who can do what. Some people are going to be capable of doing certain things. Other people are not going to be capable. The bottom line is we'll lose competitive balance, which everything we've always done in college football is to maintain competitive balance.
Okay. So if this were, let me think of one of the bright young head coaches in college football. So somebody I really like, Mario Cristobal, the new head coach at Miami. I think he's going to do a fine job in turning around the Miami Hurricanes. Like him a lot. If Mario Cristobal had said this, I'd be like, dude, come on now. You're tripping. But for Nick Saban, of all people, to say it is rich. It's rich. And I love Nick. I'm always speaking, it's Alabama fans I don't like. Nick Saban I love. All the respect for him and what he's accomplished at the University of Alabama. I have done nothing but praise this man, especially for, I've always said, when college football transitioned away from what Alabama was good at, running game and defense, into quarterbacks and wide receivers. What did Nick Saban do? He went out and recruited 5-star quarterbacks and more 5-star receivers. And he won more national championships. He was willing to pivot. He was willing to adjust to the new landscape of college football. But the notion and the thing that he said that everything we have tried to do in college football has been to maintain competitive balance. If there is any sport that has zero competitive balance, it is college football. It's college football. Okay. We know who the contenders are every year. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, the big name schools. USC's on the come up. Oklahoma, Texas, the big name schools. We don't care about Iowa. We don't care about Wake Forest. We don't care about Kentucky. None of those teams have even a prayer's chance of winning a national championship. You know the contenders in college football. I know the contenders. And for Nick Saban to say that we've always tried to maintain a competitive balance. Oh, is that why Alabama won in 2009 and they won 2 years later in 2011 and the year after that in 2012 and 3 years after that they won again, and the next year they went to the national championship again and lost, and the next year they won the national championship, and the next year they lost in the national championship, and the next year, 2 years after that, they won the national championship, and this past year, they lost in the national championship. Seems like a whole lot of Alabama. Seems like a whole lot of Crimson that I see on my television every year in mid-January in the national championship. Must I remind you, Coach Saban, Mr. Competitive Balance, 14 of the last 15 national championships have featured an SEC team. Pick who you want. Georgia, Bama, LSU, Auburn, whoever you want. Pick whoever. Florida. So let's not sit here and act like that because he talked about, the NFL, if they had it their way, every team would be 8-8. Every team would have the exact same record, and they'd have, the teams would be evenly matched. Well, obviously they're not. And that's not the point Nick was making, obviously. But in the NFL, the worst team in the NFL was the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got the number 1 pick in the draft. That's how it works. If you stink, you get the first pick. If you are great, you get the last pick to kind of even it out. That's the NFL's way of doing it. By the way, something else. If you are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you won the NFC South, you won your division, you are in first place. You know what you do the next season? You play all of the first place teams in your conference. So Tampa Bay is going to play first place Dallas. Tampa Bay is going to play first place Green Bay. Tampa Bay is going to play first place Los Angeles Rams. That's how it works. Nick Saban wins a national championship and opens next season with Austin Peay and little old schools. He doesn't open with Baylor. Alabama would crush Baylor. We know this, but Baylor won the Big 12. Right? Ohio State, or did Ohio State win Michigan won the Big 10. He would play Michigan. If he wants it to be NFL rules, let's be honest. If it were similar to the NFL and Alabama did play more first place opponents, are we sure Alabama would have 7 national championships under Nick Saban? They'd still win. They probably have easily, 4 or 5 maybe. But they don't play the other first place teams. They don't play the other conference champions. They play Louisiana Monroe. Little old schools. Nothing against those schools. But don't we always complain during the college football season that all these massive powerhouses are playing, just, also rans, borderline, in some cases, borderline Division II football teams. I want to pull up Alabama in their football schedule because it's You tell me if Nick Saban is really true to his competitive balance. Utah State. Then they go on the road to Texas. That's not going to be an easy one. Louisiana Monroe. Vanderbilt. Arkansas is okay, but Alabama's going to beat them. A&M will be a challenge. At Tennessee, I think Tennessee's going to be good, but Bama always destroys Tennessee. Bama actually struggles with Tennessee at home for whatever reason. They always crush my Vols at Neyland Stadium. Mississippi State. LSU's in a rebuild. Ole Miss is fine, but Saban almost never loses to Ole Miss. Austin Peay. Rebuilding Auburn. I mean, it's not exactly the greatest competition ever. Competitive balance. Keep in mind, Nick Saban, just a couple months ago, got into that, remember that beef with it was actually one of his former assistant coaches, Jimbo Fisher, talking about, we here at the University of Alabama, it's about integrity. We do not pay our players. No, that was not the message he was trying to get across. He's telling the boosters at Alabama, hey, guys, we can't keep up with Texas A&M or Texas. Why? The Texas economy is a different story from the Alabama economy, and the California economy is a different story from the Alabama economy, and the Florida economy is a different story than the Alabama economy. Miami, Florida State, Florida, they can pay whatever they want. Texas A&M, they can pay whatever they want. USC, UCLA, Bama, not so much. The rules are moving away from them a little bit, and Nick Saban doesn't like it. So this is honestly surprising for me as someone who's always admired Nick Saban for his ability to adjust and to adapt to new trends going on in college football. Again, I will reiterate, when around 2015, 16, when college football, similar to the NFL, started to transition into a stage where the quarterback and the wide receiver are more important than they've ever been, far more important than a great running back or a great defense, what did Nick Saban do? He got Jalen Hurts, and then he got Tua, and then he got Mac Jones, and then he got Bryce Young. And he got these star receivers like Calvin Ridley and Jalen Waddle, like star receivers. Williams, the Williams kid that they had that got drafted this year. There wasn't a whole lot of Derrick Henrys after that, or Mark Ingrams. Great defensive players like C.J. Mosley. Really good ones. I mean, they had Patrick Surtain, right, in the first round, but corner is a little more important today because you need a guy to be able to lock up your top receiver. And Nick Saban adjusted to that. I was like, hey, good on you, Nick. But with this, I don't know. All I'm saying is that the traditionalists in college football are going to be left in the dust if they don't adjust to A, the transitioning of really great programs to the best conferences. And number two, athletes get paid now. Athletes get paid now. Been saying they should, been gotten paid by now, but they are. Finally. And for Nick Saban to go up there and say, we have never paid a player. Stop. Alabama has paid players to come there. Stop. They have. By the way, Tennessee has richer boosters than Alabama. Nick Saban knows this. So, I mean, Tennessee's a rival. Texas A&M's a rival. That's all I'm saying. He plays Texas on his schedule next year. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's a home and home. So they play in Austin this year on September the 10th. And then next year, I guess they'll play in Tuscaloosa. I'm not certain of that. Let me make sure. I want to get that right because I'm pretty sure it's a home and home series. Yeah, actually, they open the 2023 season with Texas at home. So, yeah, that's, it's not a whole lot of Austin Peays and Utah States in there. So, Nick Saban missed me with all we want is competitive balance. And no, you don't. Stop. No, you don't. That is simply to send a message to Alabama fans and to your boosters. Stop. And I love you, Coach Saban, but you're being a little disingenuous here. All right. So, I was going to say I ripped one Hall of Fame coach. I don't think I ripped Nick Saban. I think I'm just being honest about Nick Saban. He's It's hypocritical. It's like, dude, you've benefited from how the recruiting's gone. The best teams get the best 5-star recruits. If it was that way in the NFL, there'd be a certain number of organizations that were always at the top. If say in the 1970s, they instituted where if you win the Super Bowl, you get the first overall pick. And it had stayed the same up until present day, 2022. Then the Steelers would have like 12 championships, not 6. The Cowboys would have like 10 championships, not 5. The Broncos would have numerous Super Bowls. The Vikings would have, Vikings will have any Super Bowls. They would have probably 4 or 5. Like when people talk about, the NFL, it's second to college football. No, it's not. It's not. College football, which is a great product on the field. When we get the two best team, or when two of the best teams going against each other, it ain't even close to the product in the NFL. So yeah, there we go. All right, moving on to another all-time great coach. Not quite as great as I think people end up giving credit for. Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick, who happens to be very close friends with Nick Saban. And the other day, the New England Patriots traded wide receiver N'Keal Harry to the Chicago Bears, and in return, they got a 7th-round pick. Not major news. I mean, N'Keal Harry has not exactly been what the Patriots thought he would be when they drafted him in 2019 in a 7th-round pick. I don't think you're going to get a Shannon Sharp in the 7th round. Of course, Shannon was a 7th-round pick about 30 years ago. Point being, this is yet another example of why it was Brady who made Belichick's legacy. Did Belichick add to Brady's legacy? Sure. I think Belichick deserves more credit than Brady for the first Super Bowl that they won against the St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf, back in 2002. After that, it's all Brady. Now, we know that we know at this stage, Brady was more important to the dynasty than Belichick. Why? Because the first year Brady gets out of New England, he wins the Super Bowl, whereas the Patriots don't even make the playoffs. And then this past year, the Bucs make it to the playoffs again and win a playoff game, barely lose to the eventual champion Rams. The Patriots get to the playoffs and get absolutely hosed by the Buffalo Bills. But I just wanted to go over what the Patriots have done in the draft ever since around the time that Bill Belichick took over, right? 2012, 13, 14. Now, 2012, he had a great draft. He took Chandler Jones, and he took guys like Dante Hightower, elite defensive players. Chandler Jones, I think, he may not be in his prime, but he is still a dominant defensive player, dominant pass rusher. But we talk about Belichick as if he's this genius. And when it comes to draft, when it comes to evaluating talent, which isn't that part of being a head coach in the NFL, it hasn't gone so well. Let's look at the Patriots' first-round draft picks since 2014. Now, we know about first-round picks. The first round is when it's the easiest to spot talent. It's once it gets to 5th, 6th, 7th round. You've scouted some guys, but you're kind of just reaching, right? You're like, okay, maybe he'll fit, or maybe this will make for a cool story if it's like a 6th or 7th round pick, if he has ties to the city or whatever. The first round, we know in terms of who's available, who fits with the team well, and who doesn't as much. So let's look at the Patriots draft since 2014. When we talk about, again, what the Patriots, ever since 2014 actually was when they won their first championship in a decade. But I think what is just simply fascinating about this is the fact that the Patriots draft has been an absolute disaster. 2014, they drafted Dominique Easley, who's a defensive lineman. Yeah, he's been out of the league for 4 years. In 2015, following their Super Bowl win over the Seattle Seahawks, they took Malcolm Brown. Malcolm Brown is on his 3rd team in 5 years. 2016 and 17, they did not have a first-round pick. 2018, they drafted offensive tackle Isaiah Wynn, a kid who, by the way, I really liked coming out of Georgia. Isaiah Wynn has played half the games that the Patriots have played since he's been drafted. In other words, he hasn't been available. Last year was his first season playing 16 games. They then drafted in that same round Sony Michel, and he is on his third team in as many years. The following year, he drafted N'Keal Harry, the guy he just traded in 2019. N'Keal Harry, in his career, in 3 years, in a league where it's all about the quarterbacks and it's all about the receivers. We talk about their numbers have inflated since then. N'Keal Harry, a wide receiver, in 3 years, 57 catches for 578 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's it. And after 3 years, it's been determined he was a bust. Thus, the Patriots traded him for a 7th-round pick. So basically, we're saying the Patriots traded a 1st-round pick for a 7th-round pick. Keep in mind, guys drafted after N'Keal Harry at his position, wide receiver, include A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, and DK Metcalf. I'm not as huge on DK as the first 2 I mentioned, but DK is a number, at that worst-case scenario, a number 2 receiver in this league. Deebo is a superstar offensive player, and A.J. Brown is a phenomenal deep ball wide receiver. 2020, they did not have a 1st-round pick. 2021, they took Mac Jones, the quarterback of the future, and I warned the Patriots on a draft show that I was on with my man Ryan Flowers. I said, if Mac Jones is the only quarterback available for the Patriots, don't go quarterback. You can wait. Go with Cam Newton, go with somebody else, and wait for the right quarterback to come along, or maybe trade for somebody. If you haven't noticed, quarterbacks have kind of been on the move as of late. Brady, Wilson, Stafford, Matt Ryan. But no, they take Mac Jones. A guy who, I want to reiterate, in a passing league, in a quarterback and wide receiver league, threw for 3,800 yards. Didn't even get to 4,000. In one of those games against the Buffalo Bills, the Patriots allowed him to throw 3 passes. Actually, I should say the Patriots allowed him to throw 2 passes, because one of those passes was a play that Mac Jones audibled out of and threw the ball, and Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, was on the sideline, furious, yelling at his quarterback. Why would you throw the football? He's yelling at the quarterback. He threw for 13 yards in a game. And once other teams got film on him in the second half of the season, look at Mac Jones' stat line and tell me he's a franchise quarterback. And in 2022, they took an offensive lineman, a guy by the name of Cole Strange. Cole Strange, a guy who, when the pick was made, Sean McVay and Les Snead laughed at it. Sean McVay, the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, Les Snead, the general manager of the Los Angeles Rams, laughed at it. Sean McVay even said, man, I was hoping Cole Strange fell to us at pick 104. So essentially, the Patriots took a 4th-round talent in the 1st round. And everybody around the league, you ask any general manager, it confused everybody. What it comes down to, what it shows you, is that at the end of the day, Bill Belichick, again, to give you a good picture for what the Patriots draft has been since he became the primary decision maker when it comes to evaluating talent, it's been pretty rocky. Ever since Brady left, with Bruce Arians, who we consider a good coach, he won the Super Bowl. He won the Super Bowl. And there was this notion in New England. I remember this. There were anonymous coaches in New England that said, we can win with any quarterback. You go back and look at it. It's from like around late 2019, early 2020. They said, we can win with any quarterback. Well, Brady left the Patriot way, and he has a 7th Super Bowl ring. And the Bucs are right in the running to win another championship. Primarily, almost entirely, because of the greatest quarterback who ever lived, Tom Brady. Bill Belichick is a 500 coach since Brady left. Even you look at Belichick's record in Cleveland, he had 2 winning seasons. Before Brady took over as the starter, 2000, the Patriots went 5-11. When Brady tore his ACL in 2008, they missed the playoffs. When he left in 2020, They missed the playoffs. Last year, they made the playoffs and got absolutely demolished by the Buffalo Bills. And Buffalo shut off that they actually have a franchise quarterback. And New England has a guy in Mac Jones. John Rivera, let me pull it up. John Rivera seems pretty surprised that I did a Patriots topic. Patriots talk. Yeah, I mean, listen, when you see the fact that Belichick has been so awful in the draft since 2014, again, like I want to reiterate, in the NFL draft, we always talk like the first round, which, you know, if you're like a draft nut like myself, and I should say an NFL draft nut more so than the NBA, you are just glued to your TV for 7 rounds, well over 10 hours of, probably closer to like 20 hours of coverage, and you're just glued into your TV. And you get to like 5th, 6th round, you're like, hey, you know, maybe that guy might work. But it's a guess. Like, I mean, it's a guess. You know, even for scouts, they're like, yeah, maybe he works, maybe he doesn't. We'll see. But it's only a 5th, 6th round pick. First round is when it's the easiest to spot talent. And that's what Belichick has. I want to reiterate. A guy who's been out of the league for 4 years, a guy who's on his 3rd team in 5 years, a guy who's played half the games since he's been drafted, a guy who's on his 3rd team in 3 years, a guy who they just traded for a 7th round pick, a guy who is clearly not a franchise quarterback, and a guy this year who we know has not played a game yet, but the smartest organization in the NFL laughed at the pick. That's where the Patriots are today. So when people come out and say, this is a playoff team, no, this is not a playoff team on any, I mean, and something else, Bill Belichick, he's always been the guy to not pay his star players because you plug anybody in the Patriot way and they can win. Well, it's not exactly been the case at the wide receiver position. And Gronk left and was very successful. And Chandler Jones got traded and has been very successful. And Brady left and he has been incredibly successful. J.C. Jackson is a top 3 corner in the NFL. Belichick let him walk. He signed a huge deal with the Chargers, and I'm sure he's going to have an outstanding year. Patriot way. As Danny Amendola, a former receiver for the Patriots, said a year and a half ago when the Bucs were in the Super Bowl, Danny Amendola, a Patriots player, said, it is not the Patriot way. It was the Tom Brady way. It's a whole different ballgame. I've always said on this show for about a year, I don't care if you have the perfect roster. I don't care. If you do not have a franchise quarterback, you can't go anywhere. Likewise, if you have an incredibly flawed roster, but you have a franchise quarterback, you've got a puncher's chance. You're probably not going to win a Super Bowl, but you've got a puncher's chance. Case in point, Derek Carr with the Raiders, Baker Mayfield with the Browns. Browns, perfect roster, didn't make the playoffs. Raiders, a roster that wasn't in any way perfect, and a season full of chaos, and Derek Carr got them to the playoffs. It's a quarterback's league, and Bill Belichick, I'm not sure he's found it out yet, but he's finding it out the hard way. Speaking of that, the importance of quarterbacks, I heard a lot of bettors are really like the Lions. I think their over-under win total is like 5.5, and a lot of people are betting the over. I don't know what people are talking about with Detroit. Maybe people like Dan Campbell. Maybe the media likes Dan Campbell because he's fun. You know, the eating kneecaps thing and, you know, wearing a helmet to press conferences and getting real emotional after a team loses a heartbreaking game. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's that he's a big personality. I don't know. But Dan Campbell said earlier this offseason that you don't need a quarterback to be you don't need a great quarterback to be a Super Bowl contender. And it's like, oh, this guy does not get it. Okay, look at the past few Super Bowls. Okay, San Francisco is the exception. Jimmy Garoppolo's a starter in the NFL. He is not a franchise quarterback. He is not certainly a superstar quarterback. This past Super Bowl, Joe Burrow, amazing. Stafford, you can say the same thing. Last year, Brady, Mahomes. They literally call one guy the GOAT and the other guy the young GOAT. Okay, year before that, Mahomes and Jimmy Garoppolo. Year before that, Brady and Goff, who had his best season. This is how it works. It is a quarterback's league. All right. Whew. Lots to get on my chest for the show today. And a lot to talk about. We are nearing NFL training camp. The preseason is like 3 weeks away. Hall of Fame game. You know, the fourth string guys are playing in the Hall of Fame game. It doesn't matter. I'm going to watch because it's football. It is America's sport. It's America's most watched television show. I reiterate, 91 of the top 100 NFL. I keep saying NFL. 91 of the top 100 television broadcasts last year were NFL games. America loves football. It is what it is. I mean, well, any football. If it's a obviously a regular season game, if it's a preseason game, if it's a Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio, where half the time the announcers aren't even announcing the game. They're talking about the new Hall of Fame class, and rightfully so. But we'll watch football. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to catch the Carving Up podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. And follow all my social media platforms. You can see down below if you're on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. You can see right there on the bar. Instagram at Carving Up Podcast, Twitter at Carving Up Pod, Facebook, just search Bryson Carver. The Carving Up logo should pull up there. And of course, if you're on YouTube, hit that big red subscribe button. It helps the channel grow exponentially. So until tomorrow, hope everybody has a great evening. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Brady was the reason for the Patriots dynasty. Y'all know that. All right, see you. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.